Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Second Age Show. My name is Strider, and with me, as usual, is Lakitia. Hello.
Hey everybody, great to be back. Great to have our fabulous new guest with us today.
Yeah, so we had a lot of guests during the all the many episodes we did in this show, and a lot of them were scholars or experts on some other area of Tolkien knowledge. But this one is very special because this is, some of you may have heard of him, like FOF or Fellowship of Fans or so on, But yeah, here for the first time, you can see our brave, great leader in person. Hello, man. Welcome to another episode of the Second Age Show.
Hello, my friends. In all seriousness, hello everybody. Nice to finally see face-to-face Stride and Lakitia in one of these panels. And yeah, it's been a long time coming.
Great to be seeing you.
It is, and it's a pleasure that you'll be joining us in full capacity. Yeah, and it's really cool that it's happening on Second Age Show. So that's also
yeah.
a
We're
big
very,
deal.
Have to do it on the best show.
we're very proud to be a part of this experience. Yes,
absolutely, and that will make this really cool episode even cooler. So
that is true.
So we can just start with exclusives for today. Lakitia, do you want to read the first one?
Yes, of course. So our first exclusive is Allendale's main sword in Season 1 is much plainer than the one shown in the posters and more resembled the Numenorian cavalry sword.
Okay, so I'm a huge fan of Narsil and everything connected to it, so Andoril as well. And this is very interesting for me because what this seems to imply is that Narsil is not something that he will be using in everyday use, and as a very important person in Numenor, and it makes sense that Allendale will have like a big position, like a pretty big position in the army. So I can definitely see him being around, like going about his usual day, just with some regular sword. And Narsil is, in top two, top three most important relics that this family has, besides the Ring of Barahir, for example. So I'm very interested to see how it will look like. I am guessing this sword will probably be way more closer to the sword we saw, like the sword with the hair with the symbol of a horse on the posters. What do you guys think?
It was always in my mind that this poster on screen and the sword in it was ceremonial more than actually Narsil itself. And I think it's interesting to see that maybe showing that this isn't Narsil, that in the first season we would maybe not be seeing it as much. Maybe that's a big plot point or big thing that's going to be affecting the storyline later on, maybe a future season. So yeah, that's just an interesting first thought.
Yeah, mostly I'm curious how many swords does this person have? So I think I kind of agree that perhaps something as important as an heirloom, which Narsil would be, is mostly used in the ceremonial capacity, and his day-to-day use will be something much simpler. So yeah, I'm curious, like excited how they managed to portray all that. So yeah.
Yeah, well, the sword was made by Telhar in the first age, so it's a dwarven sword, or like made by the dwarves. So it's very special, and yeah, I don't know, like it's going to be interesting. Will they make this a plot point? Because we may also see Elendil's father, because Numenorians are long-lived, and perhaps if we see his father, maybe Elendil will actually earn that sword. Like maybe that sword will be passed on to him.
Could be a possibility, yeah.
During the
that would
maybe
be
first or second season. Yeah.
Oh, that would be amazing. Yeah. So the reason that he doesn't use it is that he doesn't yet have it. So yeah,
I think there's definitely an option.
That would be pretty cool.
Yeah, because usually people, in a show you will have like maybe two generations interact in such a way, but here, because Numenorians are long lived, you can have Isildur, Elendil, and was it Amandil? Elendil's father as well. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens there.
Mhm.
Narion as well, possibility. Another one.
Yeah,
Hope
That's
we
always
as like that third
yeah.
generation,
hmm
hopefully.
But yeah, should we
Okay,
move on to the
Lakitia,
next?
do you want to read the second one?
I think that one is on Fellowship.
No,
Sure.
yeah.
I'll do that one then. Okay. Second one is the Numenorian army had, quote, white fish scale armor, helmets plumed with white horsetails, swords with horsehead hilts, like the post on hashtag 10 image, and that's going to be on screen now.
Mhm.
So yeah, thoughts?
My first thought was that the fish scale thing is quite similar to what we see, presumably Muriel wearing in the Hands poster. Of course, she's not wearing armor, presumably, but something like a dress. But there certainly is a thread going on here. So it seems that it's going to be like the fish aesthetic is going to be really big, really prevalent in Numenor, and maybe that's just me, but I find this combination of the like the fish scale aesthetic along with the horse aesthetic quite an interesting one, not necessarily one I would think is very natural to pair up, especially given that the horse is so closely tied to the our perception of the Rohirrim. So yeah, I'm finding this a very curious combination, but I'm really happy to see how this plays out and what it ends up actually looking on screen.
For me, this is also interesting because my theory, or like my first thoughts about this, are that perhaps that's like the fish scale may be the general theme of Numenorian army,
Hmm.
but then perhaps that the swords are with horse heads, maybe just specific for cavalry,
Yeah.
and then maybe like every like maybe infantry has another type of like maybe the handle of the sword is has like a different symbol or something. So perhaps, I don't know. I agree that it is an interesting combination,
Hmm.
pairing fish with horses, but I don't know. And I think we get like an interesting 1 or 2 second glimpse of them in the trailer.
Hmm.
But I think it's hard to actually comment on it too much because it's like really, I think maybe 1 or 2 seconds,
You
and
mean the
they're
riding one, or?
yeah, and they're
Hmm.
riding
Hmm.
it's like really a bit of a blurry scene. So
Yeah.
I cannot wait to see this. Really liked the design of Gondorian armor, especially the tower guard. They were really cool to me
Hmm.
in the movies. So I'm very excited to see how armor of Numenor will look like, especially because we haven't seen anything from Numenor yet, basically.
Hmm.
So yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, shall we pass to number 3?
Go
Sure.
ahead.
Lakitia, do you want to read this one?
Uh, yeah, sure. Despite being an island-based nation, Numenor will also have a cavalry, which will come into play in season one.
Yeah. So Fellowship. Any thoughts about this?
It's interesting because we have seen the other horse tilt, and now we are seeing this more horse theme, so it would make sense. But if to one of the leaks we're going to see later on, it'd be interesting to see if this is a newly formed cavalry due to the threat they're going to face. I think that's my little take on it. So yeah, of course, for an
Mhm.
island nation, interesting thing to have beforehand if they have decided to do that. But if it is in reaction to what's going to happen, then sure that could make sense once they're on land, of course. And it'd be
Mhm.
interesting to link it to that riding shot we saw. So yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Actually, I think we should go right into the next exclusives because they're kind of also connected a little bit. Um, Who wants to
Yeah,
take this one?
you can read
Yeah,
it. Yeah.
sure. Okay. So apparently, the Numenorian army hadn't been to war for hundreds of years and were excitably heading off, expecting glory. Left to a street parade, which was completely opposite of Faramir and his company riding off from Minas Tirith to Osgiliath. As Numenor hasn't been to war or had a fleet for such a long time, they were excited and they don't understand or expect the danger to come, and instead they just can't wait. So this is the bit why I find what Fellowship said really interesting, because they apparently they hadn't been to war in such a long time.
Yeah.
So the Numenorian didn't have any battle, like recent battle experience, in which case this cavalry is also, untested. And this is a bunch of, noobs just riding to war.
And why they're so
So,
excited.
yeah, and explains why they're so excited, but it also leads me to question how effective will this cavalry be if they're this inexperienced in actual combat.
And I think also this shows that this basically confirms that there most likely hasn't been the Battle of the Guathlo as of
Yeah,
right now. If it's hundreds of years and there is time compression, so put the two together,
of
seems
course.
like it's that. But I think the most interesting thing is that they haven't gone to war for hundreds of years. So
Mm.
the army, as Lakit said, untested. I think very really
Yeah.
maybe that's a plot point for the show, and they probably get
Yeah.
that
Hmm.
handed to them in Middle Earth.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting to me as well, because I would assume that by this point they have started colonizing
Mm.
the coasts of Middle Earth. So I don't know, will they be doing that in the show? Because then that's a pretty big deal, I think, because they should already have like that. That means that if they are going to do the colonizing of Middle Earth in some way
Mm.
in the during the show, that's a lot of stuff you need to do
Mm-hmm.
in order to do it properly. Like
Yeah.
they by this point in the timeline, in the actual timeline of history, there are so many colonies. Like when the time comes for when this generation of Numenorians is alive, they've been up and running their colonies for a long time in Middle Earth,
Yeah.
and yeah, which would also probably entail them facing dangers and having some war experience.
Mm.
So I don't know, I'm kind of surprised by by the implications of this, that they haven't been to war
Yeah.
for hundreds of years.
I mean, this is one of the things that come with the timeline compression, and this is one of the
Mm.
questions that I think we're almost curious about. What we know that Celebrimbor is alive at this time. The rings haven't been forged yet, but what does that mean? How far has the Numenorian colonization progressed? Has Aldarion happened in this, in the show canon? Have they even established any sort of colonies beforehand? Or are we gonna be seeing the colonies established for the first time? And what does that later mean for when, Elendil and the faithful are arriving by the end of the age after the downfall? So this is a lot of, blank slate questions that I think we all really, really want answers to, and they could have a really big impact on what the political landscape of Middle Earth is at the moment. Is there a Numenorian presence there yet, or are they arriving for the very first time? So yeah.
Yeah, I really hope that maybe this means that they didn't go to war for hundreds of years because, like, let's say 500 years ago they did a lot of colonizing, and then since then they became such a force. Maybe like they had such a
Mm,
strong presence there that maybe nobody just dared attacking them. You know,
I'm
Yeah.
of
especially
the
because apparently orcs weren't a thing in these past years. Like we will see the rise of the orcs now, and
Yeah.
presumably the men, like the other men, and of course the elves just wouldn't want to go to war with them. Maybe that's
Mhm.
maybe that's the thing. Fellowship, what did you want to say?
I'm still of the mind that we're probably going to see it in the show because it's a really important aspect in theme, and I don't think they'll just put that off screen before we just come into it. It's automatically like that. So I
Mhm.
think yeah, that's colonialization probably will occur during the show, I think makes more sense. But I can see straight out, 100% can see your point. That could be a possibility where they put it together like that.
Mhm.
Um, yep.
Yeah. I just wanted to say that that is true, but on the other hand, the empire wouldn't be as maybe as opulent as it would have been if there were millennia of, I don't know, colonizing history. But maybe that could be one thing, how they would differentiate between Pharazôn and Miriel. Which, this is just my speculation, with Pharazôn potentially being all for colonization and Miriel being like, okay, let's center on the Numenorian politics. So yeah.
If you don't have a standing army for over hundreds of years and never been to or across the seas, then I really doubt that they also have port cities, because you'd have to
Yeah,
manually
yeah, of
patrol
course.
them. You'd have to,
Mm-hmm.
have people with the army over there. And there's
Mm-hmm.
nothing from what we've seen so far from visual releases. Of course, we haven't seen a lot about Numenor, but around maybe port cities in Middle Earth, we haven't seen nothing of that either. So
Mm.
maybe that's a thing to come.
I was going to say, perhaps, and I'm hoping that actually that this is the case. So it's kind of like a compromise, that there are some colonies, but maybe more in the area of Anadvite, for example, and that
Mm-hmm.
we will see the Gondorian towns and cities founded maybe during this time, because then that would be like, okay, they already have a presence in Middle Earth, but then we just see Gondor starting to, what will become Gondor start to happen
Mm-hmm.
and grow during the show, and then maybe in the later seasons we can see the progression of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and
So yep.
I was saying another thing I liked from this folk one is of course, this source on set clearly knows, or at least watched the movies, and he's compared it to complete opposite of Faramir and co riding off. And the thing that reminds me of is that leak from a while ago, Isildur, leaving with
Hmm.
Poly's
Mm-hmm.
army. You got that Korean scene. So it seems like whatever's happening here with this thing happening in Numenor with them leaving will seem to be like a really dramatic and like pivotal point in the show. We're getting a few stuff around it now.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I would actually compare this. It reminds me of that period of First World War, and in USA, if I'm understanding properly, because they joined the First World War a bit later. That there was this. Basically, it was like this: they were going to war, expecting glory and everything.
Yeah,
And of course, the First World War was a war that changed everything. People started dying on unimaginable scale before that, and after that, that was like that lost generation, because
Yeah.
um, they were just so broken with the horrors that have never ever before that been seen.
yeah.
So maybe it just reminds me of that type of maybe mentality that then gets absolutely annihilated when they actually come
And
in the and face the danger.
I agree, and from a storytelling point, I think it does make sense. You get these Numenorians to be happy, excited. Oh, we're gonna go
Mm.
fight in Middle-earth. Then, of course, I think, despite us not liking that, but maybe some like it because it will show that it will be maybe for older audiences. They'll probably get annihilated. Maybe first battle they think they're going to win. Remember, nearly a year ago now, we did that. I think Strider wasn't there at the time, but I think Lakitia, you were there, and we did one of like battle and war sets. We got that. I remember that Golden
Mm-hmm.
Prince is in that battle. We've
Yeah.
got the smoke on the set and everything. So it seems like there is going to be a tough backlash from whatever they receive. So it seems like
Yeah, but I think the Golden Prince might be the shot of Finrod that we see in the trailer. That was a
I
battle
never
scene with
thought
the
of that. That could
very Golden
actually
Prince.
actually could
That's what
be.
I kind of thought. I just want to say that I agree with what you guys said. It's an interesting point to see a very hopeful, optimistic army, really excited about their first battle, and then getting very, very disillusioned by the realities of war. But I do also think that this is a very common theme motive in films, and it's become a bit of a trope at this point. So I'm not particularly excited about seeing that because I think we've seen that in almost every war movie from the last, I don't know, 50 years. But of course they could do it in a way that it's still compelling and interesting for the audiences, so yeah.
Yeah, okay, I see your point, and I agree. But this is a TV show, so maybe not a movie. So maybe they will have time to maybe uh, provide a different point of view for us in
Of
a way.
course, yeah, yeah,
Hopefully they will do this
of
in
course.
a different way. But yeah, I
But
mean that is definitely a fair point.
should we,
Okay,
for
yeah.
the one
Yes.
a lot, this is the so
Do Do you want to read the last one?
actually, Nish,
Fellowship.
why don't you go read it? You read it, my friend.
Okay. So the Numenorian army is split pretty much 50-50, male and female, in the first season of Rings of Power.
Okay.
Lakitia, what do you have to say about this?
A lot. I know this is gonna be one of
Let me get my popcorns. Okay,
I
go.
know this is gonna be one of our most controversial scoops probably that we've ever revealed. But as far as I'm concerned, I like it. There are many angles one can go about discussing it, but ultimately for me it comes down to this. So, in terms of historical accuracy, in terms of female to male ratio in armies, I think it isn't like the historical accuracy itself is not the most important thing that any work of fantasy should stay like slavishly loyal to. So, in my opinion, it's particularly telling that people often quote historical accuracy, but tend to forget other aspects of fantasy, which is often portrayed extremely inaccurately, like dental, personal hygiene, interpersonal relationships, personal freedoms within feudal societies, etc. So I think the authors and showrunners, of course, often pick and choose what kind of fantasy society they want, and it's rarely just one by one remodeling of any historical society, nor I don't think it should be either, especially in the case of Numenor. It wasn't like a replica of any historical society that we know. So I think internal consistency is more important, and the great characters, and also the vision of the creators. And I know this is an extremely unpopular opinion among a lot of the Tolkien readership, but in my opinion, I would much rather actually see women present in an army, and girls seeing themselves represented in very physical and classically heroic roles as well, then stay true to, you know, what exactly, like, what are we supposed to be emulating here? So this was also Leith McPherson, the dialect coach, recently talked at length about how the accents created for this show are not meant to represent any specific accent like 100%. They're not supposed to evoke any particular accent, even though they're based on them, and they're evolved from them. And I think this is a really good approach for to discuss this topic too. So I know this particular piece of information may rub people the wrong way, but I'm quite happy they went this route. So, yeah.
So
Well,
I do. You want to go next? And then I'll.
I mean, how do I go next after this? It's been like Um, okay, so for me, okay, I appreciate everything that you said, and I don't know. For me, this is a bit much because I just don't see it. Like, I agree that there's a lot of like the example with dental hygiene. Yes, true. But I do like. I am one of those people who do like their shows being at least mostly historically close to what we saw before, because for my personal sense of immersion, it is important. I have zero problems with seeing female warriors and maybe even like some specific female units, or just having them as in like general presence in the armies, that's absolutely okay. But speaking of consistency in a work, we never had an army that was 50% male and female. We had, for me, let's say we have Aowen, and we had the Haleth in the as one of the Haleth was one of the leaders of the three houses of men in the first age in the Silmarillion, and she was a badass. But what made her badass, in my personal opinion, was that she was a bit of unique, because when if there's like 15 female heroes and 15 male heroes, it doesn't make it that special for either one of them. So I don't personally see like this bit of news for me just doesn't seem realistic. I don't know, but then again, maybe they will realistic in terms of that we will actually see this 50-50, specifically 50-50 in the show. However, maybe they will make a plot point out of this, and it does say in the first season, so maybe that will be a part of them being like, okay, this the Numenor at this point is so confident and so, trigger happy or whatever to go into a war, and they, we're going for honor, for glory, for whatever, and they think, okay, no one can touch us. Maybe that's a part of vanity, and then maybe in this first season or start of the second one, this army will get annihilated in such a way that they will maybe realize the horrors of war, and maybe the desire for enlisting in the army will go down a bit. But anyway, the last bit I want to say is that, actually, to continue what I started saying a bit before, we don't have any instance in Tolkien's works where there is like a 50-50% male army, a male and female army. So it would be weird for me to see this happening in Numenor. There were cases. There was one case during the Third Age in Rovanion. Allies of Gondor, a Romanian army, was destroyed at some point, and then they were attacked by Wayne riders. Their homes were attacked, and the homes were defended successfully by mostly women. They were basically the carriers of the defense: women, children, and the elderly. And that was amazing to read. Like, okay, people defended their homes. It was an absolutely epic thing to read. But yeah, I just don't see this happening in any in any other nation or instance in Tolkien's work. So it's weird to see it's split 50-50. I don't think it will go that far. Basically, for me, this is like the Meteor Man. I just don't think it's going to happen like we are saying it here. Then again, we like the context. As I said, maybe they will make a point out of this, and maybe it will be,
I think
something special.
You've given, I think, you've given a point around lore-wise and how in Tolkien's works, how maybe it might be a bit alien in that regard. And I think Lakiti has given the point how more externally how it can affect. And I think really for something like this, it comes out, there's a line and it comes down to 2 points. Do you make it so, fantasy and more people are going to, relate to this, and that's the reason you've done it? Or will it actually hinder it? Because in order to have a good fantasy things, there has to be some stuff which is realistic in order for the world building actually make it feel like a show. And maybe some people might feel that having something so unrealistic like that can take it out of it. And at the same point again is that, oh, it's a fantasy show, so you should be able to, how is that the weirdest thing in a fantasy show is having, 50% of the female when you have like dragons and stuff. But then again, to counter that, that's how the Lord of the Rings works so great, because there was some realistic stuff that they stuck to, which made, that's which allowed them to flesh out their stuff. So it's a whatever side you fall on, really. I think for that.
All right.
Lakiti, do you want to say something further?
I mean, sure. I could go on forever.
I see that you want to, so please.
No. I just want to say like a few replies. I think first of all, the Numenorians are supposed to be quite advanced in terms of physical prowess. They're supposed to be very tall, very strong. So I think an average Numenorian female would likely be much stronger than most regular Middle Earth soldiers of either gender, or potentially, especially given that orcs are, like we've heard in the recent article, are a little bit scattered at this moment, not so well organized. So I suppose a really tall and really strong Numenorian female warrior would be as much of a formidable warrior as most of their men, and would still be much stronger than the rest of the foes they're facing. And also in terms of, having a 50-50 army, taken a little bit away from the uniqueness of Eowyn and Haleth, etc. I I don't like to think that their achievements were only unique because they were female, but because they were formidable warriors and because they were really brave and they stood up in face of evil, etc. So I don't think their sole value lies in the fact that there hasn't been that many female warriors before. So I don't know, all this, and of course there were female warriors throughout history, and this, I don't think this is making it up entirely and building it from the ground up. They're perhaps exaggerating the numbers as were present in the actual history, but then again, the physical prowess of Aragorn is also exaggerated a lot. He's supposed to be this really, really badass warrior with some. We often compare him to Jamie Lannister, and he often takes the cake because he's supposed to be that much better than all the other warriors. And I think, yes, there is a suspension of disbelief, but I don't think it's that fatal, and I don't think it should be either.
Well, the thing that we all have to be aware of is that we all have different degrees of how much we are capable of spending our disbelief. So please, everybody,
Yeah.
just
Of
have that
course.
in mind.
This also shows how
So,
split it
yep.
is as well. How split
Yeah.
this will probably be.
No, this was split for sure, and I would like to say that I definitely enjoy hearing about epic female heroes. That was always really cool for me, and like just reading with like 7 or 8 years of age about Eowyn killing Witch King, that was one of the coolest things I've ever read. And learning about Amazons, it's amazing. But we just the main quote unquote problem for me here is the in story continuity, which is that in Arnor or in Gondor, we don't. Okay, it was never specifically stated that the army was predominantly male, but it is kind of assumed, like when there's like when all the leaders who come to aid of Minas Tirith in the third book, they're all guys, like they're all men, So for me, I would like to see the continuity in culture, because Gondor and Arnor are the heirs of Numenorian culture, and it's never ever implied that there was such a huge percentage of females in the army. I do not oppose to that. It would be cool to see like maybe a special unit. Why not? Like what's their name? Dora Milaje or something like that in Black Panther. It's absolutely terrific for me to see that Black Panther, the King of Wakanda, has his own personal guard who's made of warriors, of female warriors. Like that's awesome. I love that. But yeah,
all right,
it's interesting. So yeah, any final thoughts?
No, I
On
think
anything?
this was an interesting one, and it was absolutely a pleasure to get fellowship on the camera at last.
Yes, I cannot wait to see all the comments about this. Okay.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Well, it was an absolute pleasure, as I said, to have this reveal happen on our Second Age show. So, cheers to Kyle for
not being here.
for being Kyle, like we miss you, guy, and we hope you'll join us soon. And yeah, thank you everyone for tuning in. Hopefully this was an interesting episode. We cannot wait to see and hear your thoughts, and see you next time.